And welcome back, everybody, to Handicap Hustle. I'm your host, Jim Breslo. Our expert handicapper, Richard Frazier of Fraze Wins, is with us as usual as we track the NFL season week by week. We come at you every Monday or Tuesday to talk about the following weekend and see how our expert handicapper has done. He faces the music every week, and we are now 5 weeks into the NFL season. And our expert handicapper is at a 64% win rate for the season. If you were playing all of his plays, you would be doing extremely well right now. He's right about what his average has been over the last number of years. But we are coming off our first losing weekend. Fraze Wins went 1-2 this past weekend, and it wasn't clear to me whether he was going to show up this week for the show to face the music, because it was his first losing weekend, and we haven't dealt with this before, and I don't know what the guy goes through when he has a losing weekend. But Rich, you're a man of honor. You're a man of your word. You're going to appear on the show, even though you're coming off a losing weekend, albeit still winning at a 64% clip. What's your mood today?
I'm never happy after a losing week, but I'm also a realist. I knew that I wasn't going to keep that win percentage in the 70s all season long, and the market was due for a correction. I mean, nothing goes straight up, so.
I can say this as a guy who's followed sports handicapping for a long time. I think this might be the very first show where a sports handicapper ever came on and acknowledged a losing weekend, because most of these guys are a scam. We've talked about this before. It's a marketing scam where they somehow manage to finagle a way to say that they had a winning weekend. But you're a man of honor, and you come on and you acknowledge when you had a losing weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you lose, and it's just part of the game. Like I said, you can't win every single week, and if it takes me 5 weeks to lose my have a first losing weekend, then so be it. I'll take that any year of the season.
Well, and again, you're at a 64% clip, which is an astounding clip, and you're only giving out essentially 3 plays a weekend. So to have one weekend that goes 1-2, that obviously is going to happen. So let's take you through the weekend. Unlike prior weeks, you started with a winner this week. You gave out 3 picks, and your first one was the Thursday night game, and you got the weekend started off right with Atlanta over Tampa Bay. You and I already talked about this on the phone, which we really shouldn't do ever again. We need to talk about it fresh on the air, because we kind of walked through this game together already. And it's now a little bit old, that Thursday night game. But if people remember that Thursday night game, it was a very exciting game. Tampa Bay at Atlanta. This is the second time that you had taken. I think it was the second time or third time. I think it was the second time you'd taken Atlanta.
Yes.
Yeah.
And back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, nobody liked it the first time when you took them at Philly on Monday night, but they not only covered, they won the game. And this time, I liked your pick, taking Atlanta at home. Tampa Bay was coming off of a big win at home, I think, right? Coming into this game? Yeah. And Atlanta was also coming off a win. They had that last-second field goal win. The coup field goal, about a 57-yarder to win the game. And this game ended up coming down to a last-second field goal again, where, again, they relied on coup to send them into overtime.
That's correct. And and you brought this up before, concerning the NFL overtime rule. Boy, these teams, especially when the weather's a little warmer still, it seems like the offense has a distinct advantage when you go to overtime. And so I wanted to win that coin flip in overtime, which the Falcons did win that one coin flip, which meant they were going to get the ball. So
Yeah, if people remember, the game seemed to be over when Atlanta went for it on 4th and 15 from their own, I think, about 15-yard line with only a couple minutes to go, and didn't get it. The game appeared to be over. Tampa Bay was going to run out the clock or at least kick a field goal and go up by 6. And instead, they didn't run the clock. They didn't kick a field goal. They got driven back, and Atlanta winds up with the ball again with a minute and a half to go, only down 3. Kirk Cousins, who's just really been on fire. I mean, I think he's looked amazing for the Falcons so far this year. Easily marches them down for the field goal. They win the coin toss. They go down and score a touchdown. And we have what I call a backdoor cover. I don't know if you would agree with that assessment, but you had Atlanta -2. And essentially, at the end of the game, the game was tied, so they were down 2. But fortunately, in the NFL, we have overtime. Didn't always have overtime. I think way back when, there was no overtime in the NFL. I think it just went straight to a tie.
Yeah, they used to play for ties. Yeah.
Right. So, but for that, we would have lost. But fortunately, they win the coin toss, and as you said, drive down with this horrendous overtime rule. The other team doesn't even have a chance. If it was college football, the other team would have then been given a chance to try to match the touchdown. But regardless, got the weekend off to a good start for you.
Yeah, I was very happy to go into Sunday's games already up a game, which means all I have to do is split my Sunday games to have another winning week.
So we go into the weekend. I liked your first pick. I didn't like either of your next 2 picks. I know it's easy to say, you know, Monday morning quarterbacking. That's kind of what the show is. Easy for me to say in retrospect that I didn't like your picks, but let's talk about them. So, New York Jets versus Minnesota, and this takes place in London.
Yes.
So it comes on super early here on the West Coast. You're taking the Jets against Minnesota. Minnesota's undefeated. The Jets are coming across an embarrassing, ridiculous loss at home against Denver, where they looked absolutely horrendous. So it seemed to kind of line up on paper as being a good Jets play. They're going to rebound from an embarrassing loss. Minnesota is, you know, riding a high, and you know, they're going to maybe overlook this game that's in London. But as I've said on the show a couple times, I was not a believer in this New York Jets offense. Aaron Rodgers, you said he thinks he's looked okay, but the whole offense has looked terrible. And I, again, put that on Aaron Rodgers. And sure enough, they have another bad game. And in fact, fired their coach this morning over this game. And we end up with your first loser of the weekend.
Well, I mean, we can say what we want about the Jets and Aaron Rodgers and this, but I mean, after watching this team play for a few weeks now, I could definitely tell you that, yeah, something definitely seems out of sync with this team. Whether it's Rodgers and the receivers not being on the same page, or whether, you know, Rodgers is calling the plays or the coach is calling the plays, something's amiss. But even with all of that being said, it still came down to the Jets in that last drive of the game. Jets could have won the game and covered the last drive of the game. And
So
it ended with Rodgers throwing a pick at, I think, the 5-yard line,
yeah.
which killed the game. But they had a chance the whole way.
Yeah, it was surprising that they hung in there. But yeah, Rodgers didn't look good. He had missed a lot of receivers. And then again, you see a lot of situations where they're not running the pattern that he was expecting. So yeah, they are, as they say, discombobulated. And it is interesting that management is looking like, you know, they're choosing Rodgers over the coach. I think there's been some discussion that there'd been some disagreement between the coach and Rodgers, and you got to figure Rodgers played a role in the guy getting fired. You know, I don't think they do that without talking to Aaron Rodgers and getting his opinion about it. And he said basically, yeah, fire him. But, you know, how many times do we see teams hanging on to an aging superstar in their waning years? And, you know, they overpay for the aging superstar. They cater to the aging superstar. and it just never works out. And, at that age, the body just does not respond to injuries like it did. So last year, of course, he tears his ACL on like the third play of the season. This year, that game he came out, the London game against Minnesota, it looked like he was going to be out, and he looks pretty banged up to me. I don't even know if he'll be playing next week. But, he's got a 40-year-old body, not in the same shape that Tom Brady keeps his in probably. And the move of acquiring him is not looking very good right now.
Well, Tom Brady's not under the pressure that Rodgers is under when he's under center. But yeah, again, I mean, they don't seem that far off. I mean, they came into the game at 2-2. They come out of the game at 2-3, but it was still a game they could have won if they wouldn't have shot themselves in the foot and made so many mistakes the whole game.
Yeah.
Whether or not getting rid of the coach will bring this team together and unite them and get them on the same page, I don't know. But when you look at this team on the sidelines, you have Aaron Rodgers off on his island. You have the coach over here trying to rally the troops. There's just something that's not meshing there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think Rodgers is a difficult guy, and him and Saleh, maybe there's an issue. I mean, Saleh is a real kind of rah-rah guy. I saw him on the HBO show on Hard Knocks. I think it was last season that they were featured on Hard Knocks, so everybody got an inside view into Saleh. But yet, the other thing they talk about is, Aaron Rodgers, he's got the third fastest release among NFL quarterbacks. He gets rid of the ball quickly. But that's because he's constantly just doing these little 4-yard passes. Whenever he tries to go down the field, he doesn't have much success. So the only success he's having is in little dump and dinks.
Yeah, I mean they've had some problems with their offensive line as well, but again, these teams are never as bad as they seem on bad days, and never as good as they seem on good days. Um,
So we might see the Jets picked again next week. That's what
hey,
I'm hearing.
you never know. You never know. Anything's on the table at this point.
So I not only lost on that game, but you're going to really be mad at me for this. So by halftime, the Jets were looking so bad, and the statistics were so much in Minnesota's favor that I decided to hedge my bet and go against the Jets in the second half. It was a pick 'em for the second half. And I thought, absolutely, Minnesota is going to continue just to trounce on them. I think it was 17-7 at halftime. But not only did I lose my Jets bet, I lost my Minnesota bet because the Jets won the second half. I think the final score was 23-17. So they actually outscored Minnesota in the second half. So I lost both of my bets, Rich.
Well, that's your own fault.
I should have had faith and just hung in there. How do you feel about those halftime? Do you like halftime bets?
I do not. I do
Well,
not. The way I analyze the games is an end result. It's not a halftime result. I mean, a program could be built for quarter results, halftime results, or game-ending results, but it's just too much work for me. I'd rather focus on just the game result itself.
Yeah, well, my assessment of it is this, and I'm probably wrong, but I'll throw it out there. It seems to me that algorithms are what are primarily creating halftime lines. That if the team was a 7-point favorite in the game and they're up by 7 at halftime, you're going to make them about a half point or a 1-point favorite in the second half. If the team was a 7-point favorite in the game and they're up by 3 at halftime, you're probably going to make them about a 3-point favorite for the second half. So there's kind of an element of keeping it at the original line, but then adjusting it slightly based on what the current score is. It kind of seems to me that it's not based so much on actually watching the game closely and seeing who appears to be doing better, who's maybe suffered an important injury or whatever, so that if you're watching the game closely, oftentimes that you can kind of get an edge at halftime versus the algorithm set line.
That may be true, but again, that's an area that I do not delve into, so I can't speak from experience on that.
Yeah. Well, we've talked before about what your methodology is, and you run a lot of programs on, and like I said, it's hard to argue with it at 64%. But I'm more kind of the guy who kind of pays attention to the teams and this and that, and gets emotional about it, which is what you don't want to do. But that's the reason, because of the Aaron Rodgers situation is the reason I didn't really like that pick. But I bet it anyway. Then the next one was Cleveland at Washington. Rich, was ready to load up on Washington because this young quarterback is absolutely kicking ass. I mean, they're talking about him possibly being the first rookie MVP since Jim Brown. What's the Washington quarterback name?
Jalen Daniels,
Daniels. And where did he play college?
LSU.
LSU. So anyway, he's just lighting the league on fire. I saw him, I had Arizona against Washington the prior week and watched them just absolutely annihilate the Cardinals. And this guy just looks spectacular. And I'm like, okay, this guy is being undervalued right now. I was very surprised that they were only 3.5 point favorite at home, considering how great this guy has been playing. So then I see Rich's pick and he's taking Cleveland. I'm like, okay, that sounds like a typical kind of Rich pick going against the trend. This team is overvalued after romping over the Cardinals. So, and that line did make me nervous that maybe I was missing something, because I thought Washington should be like a 6-point favorite at home, considering the way they've been playing. So I decided to lay off that game because it scared me, even though my inclination was to bet Washington. My inclination usually is wrong, especially with Rich saying to take Cleveland. So I laid off of the game, didn't bet it. And it turns out Washington rolls to yet another big victory.
Yeah, looking back on that game, I think there's still enough believers out there in this Cleveland team and Deshaun Watson, that they're going to somehow miraculously start playing well and win some games. And I think that was the sentiment coming into this week's game. I will tell you that I did not watch the second half of that game. I got up early to watch that Jet game, which kind of threw my schedule off. Here on the West Coast, that game started at 6:30 a.m. So I was pretty tired by the time halftime rolled around in that Cleveland game, but they hung around the first half. I remember the score being 10-3, saying, well, they're only a touchdown out, and I ended up falling asleep to wake up and see the final score that Washington did steamroll them in the second half and win the game fairly easily. But
Yeah.
but some of your losses are going to be that way, as some of your wins are going to be no sweat. That was a no sweat loss. But it happens, and again, being that we were in week 5 last week, it's the first losing week I've had so far this season. So if I only have 2 losing weeks through week 10 of this season, I'll be a happy man.
So a couple other things. I'm going to rant about the stupid kickoff again. This is the last time I'll mention it, but I had a glimmer of hope there that teams were going to start actually returning the kick and kicking it into the return zone, or whatever the heck they call this new area. But it seems to me there's just as many touchbacks as there ever was. They have not reduced the number of touchbacks.
Which I don't understand that, because it just seems so easy for a team to get in field goal range when you're starting at the 30-yard line as opposed to the 25. But I also read an article supporting your side of this, where the NFL was not real happy with the results of this either.
Yeah,
So,
well, and that's why I'm shocked. That's why I make the point that here it is, the NFL, the most valuable franchises, one of the most valuable leagues in the world, and they implement a very significant rule change, especially just it's so obvious to the eye. It's one thing to say that, oh, we're going to change it from 5-yard penalty to a 10-yard penalty on something. But when you're changing the initial kickoff of the game, this is when everybody stands up and gets excited and is clapping. It's the start of the game, and the thing looks totally different right now. The rules of it are kind of hard to understand, frankly, and you just implement it willy-nilly without even having tried it out. It just seems absurd to me.
Apparently, if the commissioners a go on it and the players union doesn't disagree, then boom, it's in. And I don't think the players union had a problem with it because obviously it means less injuries for their players, and that's the intent of this. But I think early results have shown that if you kick the ball, inside the 10 or inside the 5-yard line, and this ball has to be returned, with all of the defenders being so close, that the returns are coming out to the 35, 40, or midfield. So that the kickoff team is saying, screw this. We'd rather just kick it in the end zone and have them start at the 30 and not risk that.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I really don't like starting at the 30. I mean, with the way they're kicking field goals these days, you're 2 first downs away from already being in field goal range. It used to be the 20, then they moved it to the 25. Now it's the 30. And then they've got this crazy rule that it appears that if it lands in the zone, but then goes out of the end zone, you take it to the 20. I don't know why they came up with that rule, but that's the rule. So that seems like not a bad strategy to try to kick a low liner that skips. It lands in the zone and skips out of the end zone, which we've seen a number of times.
Yeah.
And then still way too many flags and way too many replays. That's the biggest problem with NFL is these flags and replays. I mean, why wouldn't they just try to reduce the number of flags by 50%? I mean, what am I missing there? That, yeah, I guess it would make it, I don't know if there's more thrown on the offense versus the defense, whether that would make it more of an offensive game or more of a defensive game, but it's just too many damn flags. There's a funny joke on Babylon B that said that, in a move to speed up games or whatever, I forget what it said, the announcers are going to only announce when there's not a flag on a play.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I even have this clear because I mean there are some plays where there's not a flag on the field and there doesn't appear to be a challenge by either coach, but yet the NFL stops the game to review it anyway. So
yeah, it's very confusing right now, replays. I think that they are doing some from the booth where they're correcting it from the booth during the game. Then you have this weird rule that in the last 2 minutes, you can't use a challenge. Only the NFL can review it. So I'm like,
right.
well, wait a minute. What sense does that make? The last 2 minutes are the most important. If the NFL, for whatever reason, or the referees choose not to review something, and I've got a challenge flag, and there's final 2 minutes, you're telling me I can't throw this flag? What sense does that make?
You can, but by the same token, every scoring play has to be reviewed.
Yeah, well, and in the last 2 minutes, presumably they're reviewing even more. But anyway, yeah, reviews and flags, they need to somehow reduce that. There's just no other league, I think, that's plagued by this.
Well, it's just funny how they're cutting down the time of play, which means they're cutting down the amount of plays in a game by keeping the clock rolling. But that's just so they can make up for all the stoppages of play with the replays, the flags, and whatever. So
yeah,
we're getting less football for our money.
Exactly. And they're making more money than ever, though. So who are we to judge when they're making more money than ever? All right, my friend, I think we will leave it there. That's week 5 in the books. We're at a 64% clip coming off the first losing weekend, but it was just a 1-2 weekend. No big deal. Richard will be back with his picks for this weekend, and I have a feeling he's going to make up for it big time. So he'll be releasing those on Friday or Saturday. You need to go to Substack. That's Handicap Hustle on Substack. So there might be a link in wherever you're listening to this or viewing it. If not, just go to Substack, put in Handicap Hustle. You can subscribe for free. And then if you want to get the picks, it's just a mere $79 a month. That's per month. That's at least 4 weeks of NFL picks for just $79 on Handicap Hustle on Substack. Rich, we look forward to a better weekend next weekend.
Thank you, Jim. I do too.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. We'll be back next week to go over Fraze Wins picks for week 6. Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.